Well, the Department of Player Safety has weighed in, and here's a tweet from the group. Boston's Brad Marchand has been suspended 3 games for slew-footing Vancouver's Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Gentlemen, how do you feel about this decision? Mr. Danico.
I think it's the right call. He certainly had to be suspended here, in my estimation, Johnny. I mean, you look here, this is a dangerous play as he gets that right leg and picks Ekman-Larsson right off of the ice. And again, we were talking off air, Mike. One of the best players in National Hockey. I love this guy. Every team wants him. I mean, he was dominant again yesterday.
He was.
And I know he has to play on the edge to be at his best. His style of play, and that gets him engaged. But this is crossing the line. No ifs, ands, and buts. And it's going to hurt the Bruins because they need him every minute, every night.
No doubt.
They sure do. A few things come to mind. Clearly, this isn't point of contention right now for the league. There are tripping penalties all the time, dirty trips, slew-foot penalties. And just if you watch this very carefully, if Ekman-Larsson catches his right foot in the ice, watch his right foot. If his blade hits the ice, he breaks his ankle.
Oh.
Like he 100% will break his ankle there. We've seen it. It happens when your blade catches the ice.
Close to the boards as well.
And then you follow, and your bone has nowhere to go. You break your tibia, fibula, or your ankle. So it is extremely dangerous.
Good pick up there because that was dangerous.
That is a textbook slew foot. That's not catching heels. That is kick with the foot and pull with the arm.
There's two
segments, and he did both middle of the ice in that very dangerous. So it's got to be a penalty. It's got to be more significant. And unfortunately for Brad Marchand, he's had some of these tripping, clipping kind of penalties in his career, supplementary discipline. So to get to a suspension level, which I'm sure Boston would say, well, hang on, this happened to other guys. They weren't suspended. But he has a history of kind of these questionable trips, clips, whatever it might be. So I'm okay with 3 games. And I'm okay if it's more than 3 next time, because that right there was this far away from breaking his ankle.
Wow.
This far away. So, and as far as I heard Bruce Cassidy this morning, he was asked about it. And I love coaches defending their players. And I guess I shouldn't expect anything.
And they always do.
But, to suggest they got tangled up, that's not getting tangled up. Like, nobody can watch that video and say, oh, 2 guys got tangled up and somebody fell down.
Yeah.
Or to suggest, well, PK Subban, he's got some slew foot trips and it's just been fine.
And Lindy Ruff, by the way, talk to him about it.
And so, I think at some point you look at that and you're like, we're going to let the league decide. And because it rings hollow when you try to say that's nothing. Because that is something. It's an easy call for the league.
It's a dirty play.
It's a dirty play, not liked by the league, by the league players.
That's a blatant slew foot.
But it feels
fortunately nobody was injured.
We're having way more trips that are questionable this year, or attention being called to way more trips than I thought we would.
Yeah.
So it's something that is in the game amongst all players, not as egregious as that one perhaps, but just this willingness to drag feet and catch heels. It's something that the league is clearly trying to get out of the game.
Yeah, so 3 game suspension.
And it's okay. Keep escalating. Next one, make it 4.
From Montreal over to Boston involving a player who is known with the league for stepping aside, shall we say, Brad Marchand. This is the latest infraction that he has incurred from the National Hockey League, and this time he's suspended for this play on Oliver Ekman-Larsson, being called a slew foot, suspended for 3 games.
It's not being called a slew foot.
Yeah,
it is a slew foot.
Exactly.
It is a textbook.
A textbook slew foot. But this is not the first time, as I said, that Marchand has been punished in this respect. Johnny, do you think that was deserved, first of all? And secondly, if not, do you think it's a matter of a guy being punished because he's a repeat offender?
Yes and yes. I mean, that was absolutely deserved. That was as textbook a slew foot as you can imagine. Right. It's a pull up top, it's a kick with the bottom half, and it upends the guy, gets his feet. And if you just watch these replays and watch Oliver Ekman-Larsson's right foot on the 3rd replay here, watch how close it is, the next one. If his right blade catches the ice, this one, he breaks his ankle.
If
it doesn't skip, he breaks his ankle. Yep. That's why it's dangerous. That's why he has to be suspended. Brad Marchand is one of the best players in the league. Unquestionably. One of the best players in the world. You can't do that. And he has a history of questionable trips, clips, kind of infractions over in his past. So you got to suspend him. 3 almost feels a little bit light given his history and given how close that could have been to being terrible.
I couldn't agree more, Johnny. When you go and sit down with him, and that'll be Don Sweeney's job, because you got to sit down with the player and say, look, Brad, you bring so many great things to this hockey club. We love what you do, but not this. Yeah, you cannot do this.
Now, first of 3 years to his defense, I mean, he has matured, less frequent, but part of what
is a clear violation.
Yeah, part of what makes him good is that he's edgy. He plays with that chip. He's a smaller guy. When he got to the NHL, he had to prove that he could do it physically before he could prove he could do it with the puck. Now he doesn't have to prove anything. He's literally one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
But that part of his personality occasionally rears its ugly head, and that was. You just can't do it. It's dangerous. And given all the talk about tripping, Slewfoot's, PK Subban, all the conversation about illegal trips we've seen and fines, it's on the radar of the league That was an easy one for you. That was a layup for the league.
I think you're right. And if you're talking to the player, Johnny, you're looking for him to say what? In this case, Brad Marchand should just say thank you very much and move on.
Yeah, you're right. I'm wrong. I shouldn't have done it. Won't do it again.
Let's hope that's what the conversation
Let's hope that's what it is.
Have this tweet here from our friend Elliot Friedman, one of our NHL Network insiders, does a great job with Hockey Night in Canada. Hearing that Boston and Jake DeBrusk are working on the possibility of a fresh start for the player, told nothing is imminent at this time, but something to keep an eye on. Lots of your thoughts on a fresh start for Jake DeBrusk?
Surprised it took this long to get here, I guess, would be my thoughts. Jake is a guy that can really heat up, but the consistency has not been there to the level that he would want. I don't think it's been there to the level the club would want. And at some point, something's going to give. Now, when you're managing a club, though, you never like to hear a player demand it. But you'd have to think that there's been some conversations privately. Jake is a guy that the Boston Bruins would love to be a consistent top six goal-scoring forward for them. It just hasn't worked out. He's vacillated up and down the lineup, including being a healthy scratch at times. And they've got a lot of money invested in him. I could understand why the club might be frustrated. I could understand why the player would be frustrated. And in this particular instance, I think both will probably be better served if they can find a way to get something that resembles fair value.
Okay, this is what I want to get to, because remember, he had 27 goals three years ago, then 19 in 65 games, so he's been a 25 goal scorer. Then all of a sudden last year he gets just 5, this year he's got just 3. His role has gone down, his production has gone down. He's a former first rounder, of course, in that ill-fated 2015 draft where they had 3 picks in a row.
This was the one that hit it.
And the 3 picks that were immediately after those 3 they had were Kyle Connor, Thomas Chabot, and Matt Barzal. That's different than the guys they have, Zboril, Senyshyn, and Jake DeBrusk. Jake DeBrusk was the established player of those
one guy that hit it, at least.
So what is fair value for Jake today? You tell me.
Because of the contract, they would struggle to get even a second rounder, in my opinion.
Right. And now
that's just the reality of it. Now, that's just my opinion. Somebody else may.
Don't you think there would be a lot of teams that would be willing to pay a third rounder for Jake DeBrusk?
Yes.
And see what happens there? I think there would be.
Yeah, I think they would. But the contract will cause some people to pause. People that you might say, well, of course you could use them. It's worth the risk for you. But if you don't have the cap space, then it's a no. And that's where people are going to be confused by this one.
Yeah, look at those bad teams. You think Ottawa couldn't use another good winger with some potential? Vancouver's looking to make some changes.
Yeah.
Detroit could use a little upgrade. I mean, there's teams out there that could use talent. He's got talent.
Yeah, we'll see who's willing to pay the price. You mentioned Ottawa, by the way. Of course, they've had their real handful when it comes to doing COVID-19 protocols. Speaking of, Tony DeAngelo, Brett Pesce with the Hurricanes, and William Karlsson with the Golden Knights. All 3 of these guys being placed in COVID-19 protocol, as unfortunately, even with players vaccinated, the virus is still around and obviously impacting some teams more than others.
So let's get your thoughts on the Calgary Flames, because that has been a great story this year. Why, in your mind, watching it, have they been so good?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious answer is Darryl Sutter and the impacts he had. And we can talk about, the way he motivates, the way he treats people, and the kind of respect he commands. But to me, tactically, you heard Derek talk about the defend and not, or check and not defend. And I think that's what they've done a lot better, because they turned an area where they were not good in years past into an area of strength. Last year, off the rush, no good. Gave up a ton of chances and didn't generate anything. And look at them now. Top 10 in offensive chances off the rush, but the best in the league in what they give up. And that's how the best players want to play. That's where the easiest offense comes from, and that's where all the high-end guys make all their magic happen. So they're taking that away, turning pucks over, and then letting their best players go on the attack. And I think tactically, that has been the biggest change for Calgary. Their ability to defend the rush and then transition. And now you see Gaudreau on the rush again, and Tkachuk and Lindholm, and all those guys doing what they do. So to me, that's been the biggest difference. And, of course, Jacob Markstrom being Jacob
really
Markstrom,
good.
The best version of himself.
Yeah, the least goals given up in the National Hockey League, 42, where they stand. And this was a Flames team, if you look the last few years, a lot of talent, a lot of skill, the commitment away from the puck. And Darryl Sutter, what can you say? I think he's just done an unbelievable job, and he's been one of the great coaches in this game for a long time. And sometimes we talk about old school and does it still work? Well, he's adapted, he's adjusted. It's attitude. He's given this team an attitude that, guys, play the right way on a nightly basis. We're going to put the puck in net. We're going to get our chances. Yeah, we're going to play with the puck. That doesn't mean sit back and just defend, Johnny, kind of what you were alluding to, and Derek as well. But this team has been committed all over the ice, good support, everybody hungry in the important areas, in front of their net, in front of the opponent's net. And yeah, they've got some guys that can bury the puck and playing real good hockey now. And yeah, you look at the goaltenders, That's a big factor. Always is for every team. Maybe the most important factor, playing terrific in the nets. But they just are a much more committed team to me. And that's attitude, and that's Daryl Sutter making sure everybody's responsible.
Daryl's funny that way, EJ, isn't it? Because he can be almost like a caricature. Like such an old school guy, farmer from out West Canada. But he's a bright hockey guy.
Yeah.
He's a current hockey person. You look at his teams historically, all analytically, very strong, plus all the other stuff that you talk about. So, don't let the exterior package
I think he wants you to.
Absolutely.
I think he's like sly as a fox, right?
Sly as a fox is the best way to put it, and he knows.
Because and you guys have talked to Daryl before, I've talked to him before, and the conversation, when you get him playing kind of alone and not sitting up there on the podium after a game when he's not going to really say that much, you get him alone, he really is very insightful about the way he wants his teams to play. And I wanted to ask you guys, because I thought it was really interesting what Derek said, conditioning. I mean, professional athletes, but I guess sometimes you got to let them know, hey, you're not in good enough shape. And you got to you talked about commitment. It has to start with a commitment to being
especially in today's game,
good a shape as everybody you're playing.
That seems like the bare minimum, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would think so.
Like everyone works out hard in the summer. Everyone's got a trainer and shows up in great shape. But I guess there's two parts to this that makes me think about it. One is that what you do in the summer is not exactly what you need once you get to training camp. There is another step, no matter how hard you train, no matter how great you are, that you need to take in training camp. So maybe training camps aren't quite hard enough. But I think more importantly is that in years past, their top players were probably permitted to play games, not full 100% as hard as you can go, and they still got by being pretty good in that way. And that's where Daryl's probably changed. Like, you want to play the way I want you to play, you got to be in shape, better shape all year long. Because generally speaking, you get in worse shape as the year goes along. You start in great shape, and you slowly kind of decrease as the year goes along. So that is interesting to hear. It's peculiar because it's almost like a bit of an indictment of the previous coaches and what they allowed to have happen. But you can't play unless you're able to play fast, hard, and 45 seconds every shift.
Look, every player in the National Hockey League today is in good shape. But are you in excellent shape for a long, grinding schedule? And that's also responsibility of the coach, the trainers, as far as monitoring that during the season. You talk about, Johnny, when they need rest, when they need a little push. And when they need a push, Daryl Sutter commands that respect from any player. That he goes, guys, no. I mean, you think it might be a day off. We played 2 and 3, but we need a short, crisp 30-minute practice to make sure not only do we have our energy, but we keep our minds engaged. I mean, he just pushes all the right buttons. I'm real impressed what he's done there in Calgary. And like I said, certain guys, for me, I had a general manager, and I also had a coach in Jacques Lemaire and Lou Lamoriello, that they just command respect. Didn't even have to say a word. Daryl Sutter has that to me. Is players go, okay, I'm not going to fool this guy. And I have to give an honest effort and do everything properly to be in the lineup and get my opportunity
to stay in the lineup. And if you need a push, he'll use those cowboy boots he has to give you a little push once in a while.
Gentle nudge.
Nathan MacKinnon. Some news on MacKinnon. He was back with the team in a full contact practice jersey today, and he's on track to return on Wednesday night. And good timing.
Wow.
Because the Red Hot Leafs are in town. Close to return.
That's huge. I mean, the thing about Colorado, got off to a bit of a slow start.
Getting it going now.
They had suspensions and COVID, injuries, and everything else. They're playing pretty well. Nazem Kadri's been incredible in his absence, but just think how good they could be when they bring in a top 5 player back in the game. And he'll be ready to go. He doesn't like to miss time. He's watching all these stars take off and lead their teams. I'm expecting him to be amazing, as he always is. And I'm curious what they do with the lines, because you can put him Landeskog and Rantanen, and that might be the best line in the league. They are so good. Rantanen's having a great run as well. I just wonder what they do with the lines there. Do they just put them all back together and go down from there, or do they mix and match him in lower to try to help somebody else out? Good problem to have, but good news for Colorado.
And I think they have that luxury right now because they've found their footing. I mean, remember when they started?
It was a struggle.
Terrible. It was a struggle. And yeah, whether it's injuries, whether it's the players that they were missing was part of it. The goaltending situation as far as getting acclimated, and that wasn't where it had to be at the start of the season. Having said that, they talked about secondary scoring. Now everybody, Burakovsky and all these guys, Kadri's been a pretty constant for them right from the start with the injuries. We always know what to expect from Landeskog and Rantanen, and they've even ramped it up. All of a sudden, you put Nate MacKinnon in there. He wants to join the party. He wants to join it quickly, seeing all these star guys lighting up on a nightly basis. But now the team is playing much better. This is going to be a dangerous, dangerous team moving forward.
Yeah, it should be a fun game to watch against the Leafs on Wednesday night.
Brings a good attitude, gets into shape. San Jose eats half his salary, and they find a way to make a trade. That's the only way they're going to be able to trade him. I think that's one scenario.
Do they get a return? If they
No. They'll have to offer sweeteners to take him.
Right.
It's just
I agree with you.
because now if it was in the last year or maybe one more year, then maybe that'd be a different situation. But he has 3 more years after this one.
You have to ask, though, just for the record, Johnny.
I'll have to say no as well.
Yes.
And the other scenario, which almost feels more likely to me, is that he plays the minors. He's going to play. He's going to get paid fully. And then in the summer, they decide to buy him out, and then he can move on and try something else if he's not able to find a destination this year. I think those are the 2 options. The question is, do you think there are teams willing to trade for him, whatever the parameters are, at $3.5 million for 3 more years after this one?
At $3.5 million, no, I do not. Not because there's some term left, even though...
So he can't get traded this year, essentially?
No. We could always find another team that maybe would eat a little bit for some
double
return. But someone's going to pay for the right for that contract to get paid down. How would that work? Say the Philadelphia Flyers decide we need a top 6 guy. Hey, this guy led his team last year in scoring.
It's not about the player.
I know, but he did.
Player. Yep.
So he's a top 6 guy. So why don't somebody else jump in the middle of it?
So
Sharks will eat half,
Arizona,
3.5.
Sharks eat half, trade them to Arizona. Arizona eats half. Now the Flyers are only on the hook for 1.75. And then the Sharks give Arizona a first rounder to do it or a second rounder.
I was about to say.
And then that's how it would work itself out.
Exactly.
That might be possible. Teams would be willing to do that because they could also then buy that contract out if it doesn't work out.
That's right.
But that's a lot of hoops to jump through. It's going to be very difficult for him.
You'd be crazy not to do that, Johnny, if you were the guy getting a first and then you're just running a model.
Yeah.
How much are you eating over these 3 years?
You're just buying picks. Is what you're doing.
Exactly.
Which happens
we
all
can
the
go
time.
back to Patrick Marleau.
It's all the time.
Right? Yep. Remember Carolina bought a pick. Everybody was like, oh, my God, why would anybody do that? No. They bought a pick, and then they got really lucky on it because Toronto ended up losing in the play-in round, and they ended up moving up like 10 spots higher than we thought. So, hey, it is what it is. It's out there. There's people thinking about it. I've talked to people about it. Don't be surprised. We don't know what the answer will be. It feels like the most likely scenario is nothing happens.
Yeah. The good news for Evander Kane, the Barracuda play in San Jose. So he's at home. He's not going to a different town. He can kind of live in the same place, and that is continuity in his life. And he can go and play hockey. Yeah. I mean, he's missed it for a long time. He hasn't played a game. And so for him to get back and just play again and try to be a good teammate and be a good pro and have some fun and show that you're in shape and then see what happens. He switched agents.
Yeah.
Trying Dan Milstein, his new agent. That's correct.
What has he done that's so egregious that we know about? Does anybody know? Because I don't know that for sure. Right. But I mean, with his teammates, that's
a pretty jerk move. No, Brian, I'm sorry. That is a pretty selfish, immature jerk.
Half the guys will be beside themselves, as you're saying, and half the guys will say, I don't care.
Okay, well, I'm one of the guys who would say that's a pretty jerk move, and I think.
I believe that.
There's other stuff. Yeah, you've heard it firsthand. There's other stuff off the ice that's happened in his life that would be of concern to people, I would imagine.
Yes.
There was quite reported that the team was not that happy with him as a teammate. So there's other stuff going on in there. We may not know exactly all of it.
There are many other things that we
And this is me saying Evander's a good player.
Nobody's denying his talent.
And if he can be a good teammate, then at $3.5 million, that's a steal. It's just a question of the other stuff.
Top 6 winger.
Yeah, we could do this all day long. The takeaway for me is it's a shame because he's a very talented guy.
Right.
He's got an incredible opportunity still in front of him, and you want to see young people make the most of it.
Yeah.
And for me, personally, that's the bummer of it. Yeah. I hope somehow he figures it out. Somebody will give him a chance. If it doesn't happen this year, and say the Sharks buy him out, hypothetically, in the summer, absolutely, I believe 100%, for $750 to $1 million, someone's giving him a chance. There's just too much talent there not to take the risk.
For sure. You just have to investigate all the other stuff as you.
But that might not be the right answer for him.
Well,
he has a chance to redeem himself.
And again, I mean, part of his life is that he's filed for bankruptcy. So I mean, playing and making money is part of what he's going to be doing going forward, and that's part of his life.
Definitely wish him the best. NHL Tonight continues. We've talked about a lot of matters on the ice. How about off the ice as Fenway Sports Group in agreement to buy the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, this is pending the approval of the Board of Governors. And at least according to the story we're hearing is that Mario Lemieux will stay on. Of course, Mario the Magnificent One has been such an integral figure in the Penguins on the ice, but in terms of ownership as well. Lots of, apparently $900 million here.
It's a good number.
Deal. Yeah, it is a good number.
It's a good number. It's an incredible number, to be honest with you. It's not exactly clear what that includes, but it doesn't matter. $900 million for the Pittsburgh Penguins is an incredible value. The uptick in pro sports it's not just hockey. It's almost all the sports for the last 30 years. Just skyrocketed. Scarcity arguments are in. Ask all those Bitcoin buyers out there. They are alive and well. At the end of the day, Mario Lemieux staying, Ron Burkle staying on as a minority owner as well. I think it's great news. There's a lot of groups forming, like Fenway Sports, that this is big business around the world, not just in North America. Obviously, they own Liverpool as well, and the Red Sox, amongst other things. And I like the way that they're handling it, to be honest with you, Johnny. They're going to keep continuity. At some point, we're going to see a changing of the guard with the Penguins, but I mean on the ice. Sydney, 34, Malkin, older. It can't go on forever, can it?
No, but they're playing well again, so keep riding that horse as long as you can and see what happens. But, I mean, this is a major organization. I mean, that owns now that that you talk about Liverpool, you talk about the Red Sox, Nesson, the big companies that are under this umbrella.
It's big business.
But it feels, what's nice, I think, if you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, is that it will feel kind of the same. Mayor was going to be there. He's going to be one of the faces of the franchise. He'll be involved in hockey decisions. And I think that's what maybe people were worried about. That a new ownership group would come in and maybe buy out Mario, buy out the previous owners, and then...
Often happens in a singular deal.
Right.
But this is not a singular deal for Fenway. This is a conglomerate now. And you're seeing more of these pop up, and there's only going to be more, and the values are only going to continue to go through the roof because we print a lot of money in this country right now.
And I'll say this, too, just on an aside.
I don't know about Canada, but we do in the U.S.
I knew lots of things coming. Go ahead.
Good to see Mario get paid.
Yeah.
Because Mario, back in the day, they couldn't pay him. They had to take equity in the team.
Right.
So I don't know how much exactly he owns, but the fact of the matter, he took equity in the team when it was worth $300 million. Now it's getting sold for $900 million.
Correct.
There's a nice return for him. So maybe he had to wait 25 years to get all his money or whatever it is.
Yes.
He is the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's the reason why that team still exists in their new building along with Sidney Crosby. So I'm happy that he gets however much he gets. He deserves it.
Because that's what I was thinking. We remember the time of the Penguins on the verge of bankruptcy.
They were one of the worst teams.
Mario's debt was in the filing. Yeah. You could go back and research, find it on the internet right now, I'm sure.
How much they owed him.
Yeah. Now, the reality is that over the years, Mario has been paring down slowly. So his ownership group amount probably wasn't as high as people may think.
Yeah.
But this is still a great return for him. And at this stage, I couldn't be happier for Mario. He took a big risk back then. Players weren't getting paid by ownership in the team back then. Pittsburgh went through some tumultuous times, and yet through it all, boy, they've won a lot of Stanley Cups. 5 by my count in the last, 30 years?
Yeah.
It's been an amazing success story, and of course, we'll never forget the '87 Canada Cup. Gretzky to Lemieux. And that we bring in the aforementioned David Pagnotta. Bruins right now, Jake DeBrusk. Mike Johnson putting Brian Lott on the spot. Lott tonight, maybe a second-round pick. He's making $3.6 million. What do you think? Oh, that reaction told me something.
Yeah, well, the issue is the money. For his salary at this point, even though he's going to be an RFA at the end of his term, the dollar figures are going to pose a problem. This isn't something that has happened overnight. This has been brewing for some time. The Boston Bruins have explored the marketplace for Jake DeBrusk going back to last season, going back to the offseason. They weren't able to find a fit, and then things kind of cooled off a little bit. And there was the belief that he was going to be given the opportunity to play consistently up and down the season, up and down the lineup for the Boston Bruins, and it just hasn't been the case. The tipping point appeared to have been over the weekend after requests unofficially had been made for some time, still nothing. He was scratched on Sunday. My understanding is there was actually some family in town to catch him play on Sunday night. Obviously, he wasn't in the lineup. That didn't happen. That may have been the tipping point ultimately, and him and his agent formally requesting a move out of town. There will be interest, but again, that $3.675 or whatever it is, $1 million cap hit is the biggest issue. There are teams that would like to get their hands on him to see if they can rejuvenate his career, get him back to that 27-goal scorer he was in his sophomore season. But the money's the issue.
Elsewhere, the Bruins just beat the reeling Vancouver Canucks, another team that may be looking to make changes. Travis Green, I'm sure, is in trouble. Right now, only Arizona has given up more goals than the Canucks in that conference. They're tied with Seattle, giving up 73 goals. What are you hearing right now in the future in Vancouver?
It's rough. Something is going to happen at some point soon here. If they lose again tonight against the Montreal Canadiens, they've got Ottawa coming up on Wednesday and then a 6-game homestand. I don't know if they go back to Vancouver, without making some sort of change. You mentioned the goaltending, or the amount of goals that are put forth. It's not so much Thatcher Demko or Jaro Halak. The defensive structure in Vancouver has been abysmal, and it just hasn't been properly addressed. That goes onto the hands of Jim Benning, the GM. The coaching structure hasn't been there to kind of get them back on track, and that falls on Travis Green, the head coach. Both him and Jim Benning have 1 year left on their respective contracts. Green signing a 2-year deal in May, so this is year 1 of 2. But it certainly sounds like at some point there is going to be a big shoe that is going to drop in Vancouver, whether or not they win these next 2 games before they get home or not. The Aquilinis have been looking for some time to find the right move to make and analyzing and determining what that would be. It sounds, according to the people I'm talking to, that Travis Green is aware that he might be on the chopping block. We'll see how these next couple of games go, but Vancouver is very close to making something happen. And I think it's just inevitable at this stage. The guys in the room know it as well.
6 wins in 22 games isn't going to cut it. Evander Kane cleared waivers today. What does Kane's future look like?
Well, right now, it certainly doesn't look like it's going to be with the San Jose Sharks. He's expected to go over to the Barracuda, the AHL affiliate, with the San Jose Sharks and start skating and getting his game under him and his legs under him a little bit. But it certainly doesn't sound like a future with the San Jose Sharks is something in the cards for Evander Kane. It just doesn't seem to be a fit in the room. Sounds like, quite frankly, most of the guys on that team are pretty much fed up with whatever it is they've had to deal with respect to Evander Kane. They want that change. San Jose's looking to do that as well. They're willing to retain half of his money on his remaining contract. He's got 3 years left, $7 million cap hit. It's obviously significant. But if San Jose can eat half, which is something they've actually been willing to do since the offseason, and maybe you get a third party in there that's willing to eat a little bit more, that might move things along. He changed his agents recently, moving from Newport over to Dan Milstein. Apparently Milstein has the ability to speak to pretty much any team to try to facilitate a move here, and that would hopefully help move a potential trade along here.
From Citizen Kane to Matt Murray, another big name, clearing waivers of the weekend. How did the situation with Murray degenerate to this point with Ottawa, David?
Yeah, big name and big money as well. Another guy, $6 million cap hit. It just between injuries and, quite frankly, COVID as well, playing a big factor. He battled through it last offseason, really hasn't gotten back on track here. That, along with other injuries, you see his numbers, they're not impressive. 3.26 goals against. He's got an .890 save percentage, 0-5 in 6 games. It just hasn't worked out for Matt Murray in Ottawa. They tried moving him. They weren't able to do it. They throw him on waivers to see if he can perhaps somehow regain a little bit of confidence in the AHL. And if he can, then, perhaps there's a return to the big club, and then they kind of go from there. But at this stage, Ottawa has been looking for a solution in net. They thought it was going to be Matt Murray last season. It hasn't been the case. They're going to continue to fish and see what options are out there from a goaltending perspective as Murray on the back end tries to figure out his game. The benefit here from Ottawa's perspective is the cap situation. They're not hamstrung by it. They can afford to go down this road, but obviously not ideal with a player of his cap hit.
A shame they couldn't just pay him in Canadian Tire money there at the Canadian Tire Center. David Pagnotta, the fourth.
That would have helped.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.